Hello there, YouTube. Thanks for stopping by. If you're hanging out with us, you should hit the like button. Tell us who your favorite offensive lineman in the NFL is. We're the most underrated offensive lineman in the NFL in the comment section. You can also hit the subscribe button if you aren't subscribed to the Pick Six Podcast YouTube channel and turn on alerts. You'll get notified, for instance, if hypothetically I'm a scheduling disaster and we have to go live twice on a Wednesday afternoon in the middle of June. You would get notified. So hit the alert button, turn on alerts, and you will get notified. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Big Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Wednesday, June 29th, regardless of whether you're listening or you're watching on YouTube, because we are releasing this a little bit late. Again, off-season scheduling is a little off. Hello in the YouTube chat. Long time no see, Sim and Stim. Look, if I only saw like one tweet about this, I assume this is not the general feeling, but if don't need to chirp the podcast if we miss a day in June, okay? Like, it's a daily podcast. It's not changing. This is the worst time of the year to create content because you gotta do top 10 list, and I feel bad for the people who have to write the list. I used to write them. Somehow I've weaseled my way out of it, and now stuck evaluating offensive line play. Jeff Kerr joining me now to break down the top 10 offensive linemen at Jeff Kerr CBS on Twitter. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Pretty good. I had to watch a lot of offensive line film to make sure I get this right, because people love to argue over who the best offensive lineman is in football, and there isn't a perfect science to it. It's okay. You could say Trent Williams is really good. You could say Lane Johnson's really good, but can you really evaluate them fairly just based on how their offense is run? And I mean, look at the 49ers. They run a zone read scheme. So how do you evaluate Trent Williams compared to, again, like a Lane Johnson? Then the Eagles run the ball more than anybody else in football.
And you're talking, and we'll get to some news first, and we'll get to the actual list. But your point's 100% correct. You're also not doing top 10 guards. You're doing top 10 offensive linemen. And now you don't want to do top 10 guards because then you really got to watch even more tape. But it's like, how do you sort, like, and it's changed over time for sure. It's something like how does like a right tackle fit in versus a left tackle, and how does an offensive guard? Sorry, I've got a sweaty solo cup here. I don't want to mess up this table. How does the center fit into these rankings? I think right tackle, and Lane Johnson's a great example of it, but right tackle has certainly become substantially more valued by the NFL than it was years ago. Whereas, most of the time, if you were doing this list just based on importance to their team, you're gonna have a lot of left tackles. But anyway, yeah. So like it's hard to do. And Sim and Stim, I knew you weren't being rude. We just watched the last podcast. Yeah, it was like we just did one a second ago. I've been sitting in this chair yelling at my computer for 53 minutes and 15 seconds. I'm going insane. It's the off season. There's too much stuff going on. Fortunately, the news is a little slow, but Jeff, we'll get to a couple of things, namely the Terry McLaurin extension as the Washington Commodores, Commandos, whatever you want to call them. They signed Terry McLaurin to a substantial extension, 3 years worth up to $71 million with a $28 million signing bonus. McLaurin was sort of, I think he was holding out. Was he actually holding out?
Was it a hold in, kind of like he showed up, but he wanted the contract?
Oh, it's Greg Rosenthal of NFL Media. We got to give credit where credit's due. Buddy of mine, friend of the pod. Greg actually came up. I believe he coined the phrase "hold in," as you noted. Like, you show up and you just don't do anything, and you're like, look, I'm not, because when they did the new CBA, and actually I think it may have changed in 2011 originally when they did the CBA. It basically made holding out impossible. You can't hold out because the teams will find the living bejesus out of you. They'll eat up all your cash. You won't get any money. And it doesn't work the way it used to. Like, Darrelle Revis famously held out from the Jets, and they were just finally like, here, take all our money. You can't do it anymore. Players can't hold out. They hold in. And that's sort of what Terry McLaurin was doing. I'm trying to find, why is his contract not updated in the rankings? Anywho, $71 million. So that would put him right in the Christian Kirk, Kenny Galladay range, But we're talking about 71 divided by 3 in terms of the extension, which gets him to 23.6 per year, which gets him right in between DJ Moore and Stephon Diggs, right below AJ Brown as well, in terms of average annual value for that contract. And I think that that's probably a pretty good number, Jeff. Like, Terry McLaurin has been a very good wide receiver. He has not been like a top 5 wide receiver, but he's had no help in terms of his quarterback play. And it's a guy that you clearly see the skill set. There's no question in my mind that he's a number one. It's just, can the Washington offense, position him such that he'll justify the money?
For Terry McLaurin, I think if we could list all of his quarterbacks since he's entered the league, there's probably one we're missing. I forgot Josh Johnson throwing passes to Terry McLaurin at one point. So, yeah, Washington's been all over the place when it comes to that receiver. Carson Wentz might arguably be his best quarterback he's had. And I didn't say it much. Like, I was really excited to see McLaurin last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and it just never happened. It happened for 2 quarters, and that was it. Done. So, yeah, I think Terry McLaurin is a very underrated receiver. He gets his catches, he gets his yards, gets his touchdowns, moves the chains. I, for one, think this is a really good deal for Washington. I think it's a good deal for him, too. Personally, you couldn't have paid him any less than what he was worth.
Yeah. I mean, and I think with McLaurin, because I'm so brain dead. I want to say, and I'm 99% sure that I'm correct. I am correct. Terry McLaurin, part of the 2019 NFL draft class. He was, of course, famously one of many wide receivers, a 3rd-round pick, 76 overall, many wide receivers who were just substantially better than the Patriots pick at number 32 overall in N'Keal Harry. If I were a spiteful, vengeful, you know what? Actually, if I were a rude person, I would then go on to point out other wide receivers taken in this draft class, perchance by other NFC East teams. I'm not, though, and because I would do it if you weren't here, Kerr. If it was just Debo.
A terrible pick that draft. Do you remember who they picked?
I that's what I'm getting at. J-Jaw. Yeah. I was going to make a J-Jaw joke, but the Eagles are now my adopted team, and you're taking time out of your day to be a guest here. Debo has to be here. He doesn't have a choice. So I don't mind making fun of J-Jaw with Debo, but I don't want to.
J-Jaw, he's terrible. He's a terrible.
He's terrible.
He's going to get this year.
And Howie Roseman made up for it by trading for AJ Brown. And I think that's sort of the thing is like AJ Brown. If I was Terry McLaurin's agent and I was doing this negotiation, there's no question in my mind that AJ Brown has been more productive and you're probably taking AJ Brown in terms of what he's done on the field over Terry McLaurin. But it's reasonably close given the pieces around each of their respective games. And so my point being is that I think that Terry McLaurin slotting in right under AJ Brown's contract on an average annual basis makes a lot of sense. So I have no problem with this deal. And the other thing about Washington too, remember that they had to trade for Carson Wentz this offseason. Their owner is currently being subpoenaed by the Senate. And so what better time to announce a contract extension for your best young player and one of the few really good young players on your roster than right now in the middle of said subpoena while your owner is, out of the country trying to avoid testifying before Congress. So good news for Washington on that front. And I like the idea of paying him here. It makes too much sense.
I can't name too many good things Washington has done right over Daniel Snyder. So I'm on a 90s football binge right now, Brinson. And I was watching the Bucks Washington playoff game from '99 where they took a 13-0 lead, and I was like, "Oh my God, Washington! They finally figured out Brad Johnson. They're going to go to the NFC Championship game." Nope, they blew that. So, and everything's been downhill ever since for them. So it's nice to actually talk about them in a good light for once. But Daniel Snyder he's just the worst owner. He might be the worst owner in sports, and that's saying something because James Dolan's in New York.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Snyder is definitely up there. I mean, the Washington fan base is rabid, and they become apathetic, which is almost impossible to do with a team that had that many Super Bowl victories, in the 90s. Debo asked the question in the rundown, what's the potential of this Washington offense? I actually I am not a Carson Wentz fan. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows that.
You're not.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not either. Debo still is. True Eagles fans really don't care for Carson, but who's to say who a true Eagles fan is? At any rate, I do think that Carson Wentz, as you point out, probably the best quarterback Terry McLaurin's played with, can definitely push the ball down the field vertically. Scott Turner's a smart offensive coordinator who will put Carson Wentz in positions to succeed, and Terry McLaurin is going to be his number one. So, I think Terry McLaurin's got 1,500-yard receiving ceiling. Particularly if the Washington defense, and in front of the pod, JP Finley, I was on 106.7 The Fan with him, and he mentioned that he thinks the defense is going to be a problem in Washington, that the sort of second half correction that we saw after the bye last year might not be the real Washington defense. And if that's the case, then you're going to have a situation where Carson Wentz is going to have to throw more because the defense won't be stopping people. And that should lead to Terry McLaurin getting his numbers and the offense looking better. Carson Wentz probably still in Indianapolis, if not for that Week 18 game, and maybe Washington will benefit from it. Terry McLaurin certainly will benefit from it. The Baker Mayfield saga continues to roll on. Baker was asked via Kerry Murdoch of Soonerscoop.com, Oklahoma site, Boomer Sooner, I guess, asked about sticking around in Cleveland and said, no, quote, no, I think for that to happen, there would have to be some reaching out. But we're ready to move on, I think, on both sides, Mayfield said. I was asked about this last night at a buddy's house. People are fooled into thinking I have answers to football questions, and I usually can fool them into thinking I do by filibustering about, But we were talking about, anyway, my buddy was a big Clemson fan, or his wife's a big Clemson fan, and he was asking about Deshaun Watson and the situation. And I said, I think he's going to get a year, probably 12 games, absolute bare minimum. And so then the follow up from the other friend was, will that lead to Baker Mayfield staying in Cleveland and playing? And I really don't think so. I think the Panthers are going to trade for him. It's just a matter of figuring out the compensation.
Yeah, now I think it could be Baker versus Cleveland Week 1. Think about that.
Which would be amazing. Now, the issue here is that if you're the Browns, and again, this is all very dependent on what kind of suspension Watson gets. If it's 6 games, I don't think you really worry about trading Baker and you can go with Jacoby. If it's 12 games and you're thinking, okay, we're going to have 5 games with Deshaun, we're going to need to win all 5 of those. We're going to need to figure out a way to go 6-6 while he's gone, or even 5-7 maybe, right?
So 5-7, 6-6. It's
doing the math in your head. You're trying to get to 9-8 or 10-7 because you feel like you get in the playoffs that way. So you're trying to figure out how do you tread water. The issue for the Browns becomes: do you give the Panthers Baker before Week 1, or do you wait until after Week 1 to trade him? Because obviously the price is going to go down. You're going to pay more of the salary. There's a whole lot of factors that go into it. But yes, that is entirely possible. I think that Baker is ready to move on. Cleveland could say, if Deshaun gets a full year suspension and does not appeal it, say, look, Baker, we're bad. Okay, we feel bad. We traded for Deshaun, shoved it in your face, former number 1 overall pick. We screwed up. However, you got 1 year left on your contract. This is a really good spot. We'll amend it where we will not attempt to retain your services via franchise tag or whatever after this season. Not that they'd be able to really financially, but the point being is you come play for Deshaun's not here for a year. He's going to be suspended, away from the team. Come back in. Let's all pretend to keep it together for the kids and see if we can go make the playoffs, and then you'll get paid in the offseason as a free agent. I mean, is that I think that's a possibility. But if I'm Baker, Baker's a spiteful dude. He's not going to do that. I feel like he's just send me to Carolina, you jabrones.
Oh, he's a spiteful dude. If I was him, I'd let this franchise stew. And I keep going back to when I covered the Week 12 game in Baltimore. Baker came to his press conference. You could tell shoulders bothering him, knees bothering him, ankles bothering him. He walks in there like he's normal, and everybody looks around the room like, what's he trying to hide here? Is he trying to prove what a warrior he is? And he stood there, he answered all the questions. He was a professional the whole year. I mean, he literally took one for the team the whole season. This is how you repay him. If I was Baker Mayfield, I'd say, guess what? I'm holding out. I don't care. You have to pay me anyway because it's a 5-year guaranteed option. I'm going to make you release me or make you trade me to where I want to go. You're the one who said you wanted the adult in the room. I'm being the adult now, not you.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, that's what I would do. Because that no matter if you come back and you play for the Browns and you play, like, I mean, even if you play well, like they're like you're getting ditched. If Watson gets 12 games, I'm like, if I'm Baker, I'm like, no, I'm not playing 12 games for you, and so I can get benched for Deshaun Watson. Like I play poorly, I get hurt, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not doing that.
Exactly. And I think the only time, like, in recent memory, I remember a player having this much leverage was when the Eagles moved Jason Peters to guard. Again, Eagles reference here. They moved him to guard, and I'm trying to remember the tackle got hurt, but he got hurt before the season, and Jordan Malott wasn't a thing yet. And Jason Peters just kind of, I would have loved to have been the fly on that wall in Howie Roseman's office when the Eagles called Jason Peters in and told him they wanted to switch him to tackle and he gets a big pay rate. I would have loved to see Jason Peters' face. He said, oh, my. Oh, all of a sudden, I'm valuable to you now. So, yeah, if I was Baker Mayfield, that'd be the only way I'd ever come back in that office. I'd actually demand a raise to come back.
I'm with you. I got no problem with Baker hanging the Browns out to dry here, especially when they brought up Jacoby Brissett to be the backup. I tell you what, we'll break early because if we try to bang out the top five, the bottom five of the top 10 offensive linemen, Debo will yell at me like, "Oh my God, this guy won't take a break. He won't shut up." So we're gonna take a break now, and when we come back, what perhaps surprising Eagles offensive lineman crept on the back of Jeff Kerr's top 10 offensive lineman list? We'll tell you next. Maybe it's not surprising. Like, I guess if you're a big football fan, it's not surprising but the Eagles, did they draft? Is it 2018 when they drafted Dillard?
19 they drafted Dillard.
19 was Dillard. 18 was when they drafted Jordan Mailata.
Yeah, and they traded in the draft together. Yeah.
That's right. They traded back into He's from he's Australian. I believe he's like a rugby player, like an Australian football player. I think I remember it was Mike Garofalo, maybe, who's always around Philly and the Eagles organization. I think he was talking about it during the draft. I could be wrong, but it was a big story for the NFL. And just to kind of, again, pull back the curtain, which we like to do, not at CBS, but at the NFL really, really, really likes to push the idea of the international players program. They love the idea of success stories coming from different countries because it then inspires it grows the game in those countries, and more importantly for the NFL, it grows their revenue stream. Like it's not like international goodwill. They're trying to get rich, like really rich, because 14 billion ain't enough. But you have somebody in like Jordan Mailata is from Sydney, New South Wales, which is just Australia, I believe. One of 7 players to come out of Australia. And in the modern era, really just so David Yankee, Jared Haney. God, I remember him. God, we wrote about him so much, and he just didn't do much. I didn't do so much Australian radio for Jared Haney. But Mailata and Michael Dixon, the Seahawks punter, the two guys who sort of emerged as kind of bigger Australian stars. Like Mailata, it was kind of thought like, like the Eagles think this guy's like, maybe who knows what could happen, a 7th round pick, or from a different country, like maybe he'll turn into something. He's turned into an amazing offensive lineman,
and they paid him. He's gonna be a bargain for that. Like they pay him before the year started. I'm like, wow, these guys only made like 10 career starts, and you're paying them. And I'm telling you, it's all offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland. If there is any valuable assistant coach in the National Football League, it's him. That guy turns garbage into gold. He could make Danny Watkins something if he was around.
Let's not get crazy here.
I know.
That's an Eagles. I get it because I was covering the NFL then. Like Watkins was like 29. He's like a former fireman when they drafted him in the first round. It was like, all right, this would be great. Like, meat and potatoes, blue collar, Philly guy. And it's like, wait, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't draft 28-year-old like dudes in the first round. Maybe that's just a bad
draft though, so that ended up working out well for them.
Wait, they had who else did they get that draft?
They got Jason Kelce in the 6th round that year.
Oh, that's right. God, what was it? Oh, that was my first draft I was covering.
Really?
Yeah, 2011. Man, drafted him right before Cameron Jordan, likely Hall of Famer. Could have been worse. I mean, Cameron Hayward went right there too, but it's not like the Blaine Gabbert or the Washington take. Washington Ryan Kerrigan, which wasn't that bad, but like Blaine Gabbert right before J.J. Watt is the real dagger of the draft.
Yeah, before hot takes were a thing, I still remember saying, "Why didn't you take Leroy Jordan's son?" That was my take at the time. I'm like, why didn't you take him? Leroy Jordan was a good football player. Well, you assume Cam would be Howard Sachs later.
I'm not kidding. When Danny Watkins took his first snap with the Eagles, he was 27 years old. How is that possible? That is insane. Don't draft somebody that old. All right. Anyway, moving along. Colton Miller checks in at number 9 on your list.
Yeah, Colt Miller he might have been the worst tackle in football. What, 3 years ago, 2018?
He was his rookie year. He was really bad. Maybe he wasn't as bad as I think, but he was not great.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, like he's became a pretty good pass blocker. And if you look at what's next to him, it's not much. So Colton Miller's pretty much doing it by himself. He kept Derek Carr upright a lot last year, and if there's any player that I got to give credit to for actually becoming a decent player outside of how bad he started, it's Colton Miller, and you got to give him credit. And the Raiders, I think they paid him. I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah, they paid him. And the other thing too, he was drafted right at like 2 spots ahead of Derwin James, and everyone loved Derwin James. It was like, what are you doing? Like, this guy better be. And it was like they were like, all right, we're gonna. And was it Gruden? Gruden drafted him, I think.
Yeah, Gruden drafted.
Yeah, it's like everybody's like, I mean, look, guilty as charged. Everybody's ready to pounce on Gruden for any of his picks, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna move this guy. We're gonna move this guy with a right tackle, like out of the gate. It's like, why did you just draft a right tackle like a project right tackle at the early in the middle of the first round with Derwin James on the board and like Leighton Vander Esch out there, and not that he's been proven right, but Gruden deserves more credit for that particular selection than maybe. Like we all pile on Gruden for the bad 3 picks the next year, but I mean, like that actually ended up being a pretty good pick.
Yeah, and the thing with Colt Miller is, if I remember correctly, wasn't he like a top 10, top 15 like prospect the year before that? And then he had a bad senior year at UCLA, and then had a bad first year in Oakland, and then it seems like ever since he moved to Vegas, he's become pretty good at his job.
Yeah, maybe the guy loves the old craps tables or something like that. Ryan Ramczyk at number 8. Now with what are I gotta double check. This is one of those things where like you forget about it in the offseason, but I guess so I would assume that the Saints are going to keep Ramczyk at right tackle and plug Trevor Penning in at left tackle. I haven't read anything about what they might be doing in minicamp, so if I'm wrong, yeah, I'll take the L, whatever. But if you, I mean, they could move Ramczyk to left tackle where Teron Armstead was. But I would sort of think they'd want to keep the steady spot there on the right side, right?
Yeah, and Ramczyk's one of the best right tackles in the game. I don't know why you would move him. There's a reason why someone like Lane Johnson doesn't move, because you don't have to. Trevor Penning, you can teach him how to play the left side now. You got Ramczyk over there. Andres Pete's a good veteran for them. I think Andres Pete's there. So you still got what's the guy's name? Is it McCoy at center? I always forget.
McCoy's at center, and then they got they drafted Cesar Ruiz recently.
Cesar Ruiz.
And I think they'll put Pete will probably play left guard. And that's the other thing too, is like if you're putting Penning at left tackle, you've got a veteran in Pete who could kick out if he absolutely had to, or is gonna help a rookie by being there on the left side. So yeah, I mean, I think I would assume that Ramczyk stays at right tackle, where you are correct. He is one of the best right tackles in the game.
Yeah, and here was the thing last year. They did miss him. They missed him terribly, especially down the stretch. I'm trying to remember who filled in for him, but if we were going by WAR with offensive linemen, it definitely wasn't replacement level production. I'll just say that.
Okay. yeah. And look, Ramczyk, absolutely deserving of a list. You can probably make a case it could be even higher, but when you start to look at who's on here, you're like, oh, okay. I mean, this is just kind of a great list. Ronnie Stanley of the Baltimore Ravens missed some time. Actually, did he miss the whole season? He missed almost the whole season.
Yeah. He played week 1, and then he got hurt. All the Ravens injuries happened within like 6 days.
They had 196 games, like 190 plus adjusted games lost according to Football Outsiders. It's insane how much time they lost. And I mean, Stanley, if he's healthy, is one of the best tackles in football. I mean, and he's paid like it. Makes just under $20 million a year. Like he's the reason that the Ravens were willing to trade Orlando Brown. I blanked out on his name, but they traded Orlando Brown because Orlando Brown was adamant he wanted to play left tackle, and the Ravens were like, we don't have room for him at left tackle because we got Ronnie Stanley. Stanley's been he's fantastic when he's healthy, and really you look at the Ravens' injuries last year, left tackle and running back. Those are problems for a team that has the most rushing attempts by 300% of any team in the NFL over the last few years.
I used to laugh the Ravens games I covered last year. I covered the Chargers game. And I remember saying, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Devonta Freeman's on this team. Oh, yeah, Latavius Murray. Well, I knew he was on the team, but I'm like, oh, yeah, Tyron Williams, who won me 2 fantasy games earlier in that season, was basically an inactive. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, what? Like, how is this team winning? And they were leading the AFC at one point going into December, and then Lamar got hurt, and that was the end of it. But they missed Ronnie Stanley last year. I'm trying to remember who even played left tackle for them. Their offensive line was all over the place. Bradley Bozeman was hurt. They just had guys, but if Ronnie Stanley is healthy, he's one of the best in the game. And you're right, Will. That's why Orlando Brown is not a Baltimore Raven anymore. He just wanted to play left tackle, and they said, sorry, dude, Ryan Stanley's better than you. And no disrespect to Orlando Brown, because he's pretty good himself.
Absolutely. Sorry, I muted myself as I was searching. See, when you go again, like I said this on the other pod too, but it's like, you go on vacation and like, I mean, I haven't been reading about the Ravens minicamp. Like I just haven't been reading for the Ravens minicamp. But according to, this is 2 weeks ago. Actually, this is on CBSSports.com. This is awkward if you wrote it. Thank goodness you did not. John Harbaugh a week ago said Ronnie Stanley, J.K. Dobbins, and he said someone else Gus Edwards should all return from injury for training camp. So that's enormous for the Ravens. Again, we're talking about a top 10 offensive lineman, very deserving of a spot on this list. At number 6, David Bakhtiari, Aaron Rodgers' longtime pal, who I would kind of guess. So he was drafted in the 4th round in 2013. 30, will be 31 by the time the season starts. I wouldn't be surprised at all, Jeff, if he walked away at the same time as Aaron Rodgers.
I wouldn't be either. He's been banged up the last couple of years too. And last year, I remember he came back. I think it was week 17, week 18. He played like a little bit in the regular season.
He only played one game last year.
Yeah, I remember Packers fans like, we got our guy back. We're going to win the Super Bowl. It's all going to happen. I'm like, you guys know, like, you were pretty good without him, right? But obviously having him in the lineup helped. It was Elton Jenkins, I think, ended up playing left tackle for them for a long time. Yeah, so, I mean, he was pretty good. So, overall, I'm just thinking to myself, okay, what's going to happen when this guy is healthy and he's on the field? Because he's probably the best left tackle in the game when he is healthy. You can't keep him off the top 10 list. That was a no-brainer for me. It was just, where do you put him?
Yeah, and, like, if you look at his run from, and I'm doing the same thing now. I'm trying to make sure that David Bakhtiari is expected to be. He's not in the. This is from sitting out of OTAs. This is a month ago. Sitting out of OTAs with a goal of returning to training camp. And there's a lot of headlines like, "How concerned should the Packers be about David Bakhtiari?" Packers News. When is it time to worry about David Bakhtiari? So those are all a month ago. So I think in this case, your placement of Bakhtiari at 6 is a pretty good move, because you're talking about a guy who, from 2016 to 2020, somehow only made he made 2 first-team All-Pros, 3 second-team All-Pros, but was just absolutely one of the most dominant left tackles and offensive linemen in professional football. Gets hurt last year. So, like, you don't want to put him as, like, you don't want to put him as, like, 2, right? Like, you're 3, but you want to have him high enough where if he comes back, you don't look like an idiot for leaving him off or having him 9. And so if he plays a full season, you'll look smart, because I like the placement of him at 6. Plus, when you start to look at the guys ahead of him, man, Rashawn Slater. What a pick.
Monster. Of
Rashawn Slater and Justin Herbert in back-to-back drafts. Like, you get the quarterback and you get the left tackle to – it was back-to-back drafts, right?
Yeah, back-to-back. And they got Zion Johnson this year, which is another good pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I don't know if the Chargers will end up being as good as everybody expects the Chargers to, but, give credit to Tom Telesco. You got Mike Williams, you paid him, you paid Keenan Allen, you got the weapons there. You need a little more speed maybe, but you have Justin Herbert and you put pieces around him, and you drafted immediately a left tackle to protect him. Hey, Tom, where the hell was that when Phillip Rivers was playing, pal?
You know what it is? I love the hidden messages. So I interviewed Justin Herbert in February, and I just interviewed him last week. I remember I asked him specifically about Mike Williams in February. He's like, "Oh, I'd love to have him back." That's pretty much the gist of it. All of a sudden, I'm like, "Well, Mike Williams is going to be a Charger. There's no way they're going to let him go to free agency." Right. Then I was like you, I remember who the GM was, but it seemed like they learned a lot from basically having Philip Rivers carry that organization for 10 to 15 years. And I think they're saying that, okay, yeah, we got to find a way to win a Super Bowl with this guy because we didn't do him right. They did not do Philip Rivers right for a decade.
Yeah. By the way, Rashawn Slater, I want to point out to all the haters and the losers, namely John Breach, Ryan Wilson, and Sean Sean Bleeper McBleep, that Rashawn Slater was 4th last year in terms of the offensive rookie of the year voting. Now, granted, he only got 1 vote. I don't care. Jamar Chase got most of them. I'll vote. So all the complaining about the idea that Trent Williams could win Comeback Player of the Year or Garrett Bradbury could win Offensive Rookie of the Year has been nullified by that single vote of an AP voter, probably a Chargers beat writer, who put Rashawn Slater as the Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think that you could justifiably make a case. And look, you're not going to do it because you got freaking, Jamar Chase going nuts. But like Rashawn Slater was so good last year that if Jamar Chase hadn't gone bananas late in the season, or Mac Jones hadn't, wasn't a quarterback on a team that was in playoff contention, you could have given him the award. I mean, he just is a plug and play superstar left tackle from day one as a rookie. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
He's one of those guys. It's a shame that there's so many people now in football that watch where the ball's going instead of watching what's going on in the trenches. Because if you slow the game down and just watch Rashawn Slater just pulverize defensive ends left and right, it's fun. And he was just as good in the run game. So, I mean, Austin Eckler, the reason you're giving him 200 touches is because Rashawn Slater is running in front of him. So, kudos to Rashawn Slater. I mean, I probably could have ranked him higher if I wanted to, but I think 5 is justifiable.
Yeah, I think 5's are very good. And look, like, you want to see it from a rookie who plays that well, like back it up your second season. It's crazy though that like I think Daniel Jeremiah maybe, and I'm sure like some of our guys at CBS, but I think DJ had him above Penei Sewell, and people were like, "That's outrageous!" I was like, "He looks pretty good right now," because Penei Sewell was not bad, but Rashawn Slater was great, like second team All Pro, Pro Bowl level, Rookie of the Year level. At number 4, little Eagles double dip. The Lane Johnson, the longtime Philadelphia. I love Lane Johnson. He's just a beast. First round pick in 2013 out of Oklahoma, and he is man. I mean, the Eagles. Are you at all? I mean, obviously, Mailata, becoming a stud out of the seventh round in 2018. We mentioned him already. Like that's a huge win for them, particularly with the Dillard stuff. Where Dillard hadn't lived up to maybe what they hoped quite yet, but there's still plenty of time. Are you all worried about the Eagles' offensive line and the age factor? Because it does seem like Jason Kelsey's on his last year. And, I mean, Lane Johnson is pretty old, I believe.
He's 31.
Okay.
He's getting there.
He seems like the dude, though, because he's so tight with friend of the pod, Chris Long, that I can see him and Long and Chris like. Chris is like, dude, retirement. He's like, I just sit up here in my Charlottesville mansion and ingest redacted all day long and podcast. It's incredible. You should think about it. Lane Johnson's like, hey, you know what? That actually sounds amazing. I do want to leave football.
I could see it. Probably not in the next year or two. I think he's still got a lot to prove. Last year he had the anxiety thing, which
again, I forgot about that last year. He stepped away. He had a great season last year.
Yeah, he just walked away. It was like, okay, is he ever going to come back? And he tackled it head on. I would love to ask him just personally about it. Like, what was going on? Like, I don't know if it was like a family thing, but Lane Johnson never seemed like, this could happen to him, but it did. And he said he's been battling it pretty much his entire life. And he was just a rejuvenated player when he came back.
It's kind of, I mean, like, I don't want to say it's refreshing, but it's like, it is in that sense of like a guy who's like as tough as like, just like burly and like strong and like dominating the field. And he's like, hey, look, man, I got head issues too. Like everybody's got them. It's okay to go through them. You don't have to, you don't have to freak out about it. Right. Or freak out about it, but it's like, it's okay. Like even like I'm literally one of the strongest humans on the planet Earth. And even I have issues that go on in my head. So I'm with you. I think, and he battled injuries, I believe, maybe not 2018, but 2019 and 2020, he missed time. And he only played 11 games last year, but was dominant, as you point out, when he came back, particularly actually had a receiving touchdown as well in last
He had
year.
more receiving touchdowns than Kenny Galladay, I think, last year.
Oh God, I wish I had a dunk button going on. That is fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, like, he hasn't played, like, his 2017 season was just like an epic performance. Like, that is what has vaulted him onto these lists. He probably hasn't played at that high level, but I think he still got it in him. And if the Eagles are going to be a team that competes for the NFC East, a team that competes for a Super Bowl, hoping that Jalen Hurts takes this step forward, Lane Johnson is going to be a huge factor in that run. At number 3, will be a third-year player going in, another out-of-the-box, just dominant beast of an offensive lineman. Tristan Wirfs comes in 2020, helps the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win a Super Bowl. He was right tackle. He was playing right tackle, right? In 2020. Yeah, because they had Donovan Smith. Right.
Yeah.
So he played. But I mean, like, to come in as a rookie, even though you come from a Kirk Ferentz, Iowa, we run the ball 4 billion times, and that's why our tight ends and offensive linemen are decent in theory program. But to come in and be as prepared as he was and to be as good as he was, especially when, like, you're a rookie and Tom Brady is in his first year with this team and is very intent on trying to win, like, big, to come in and play as well as he did as a rookie, incredibly impressive. And then he was just even better last year. First team all pro, Pro Bowler, played all 17 games, an absolute monster for the Buccaneers, and has already easily justified his 13th overall position. The guys who went ahead of him at that position, we had, what was it? Wills went to Cleveland at 10. Mekhi, Andrew Thomas went 4. That's right. Thomas has actually rounded into pretty good shape, and played much better last year. Wills has been good. I think he missed some time last season. And then Becton, clearly had that nasty injury, but was very good as a rookie. The truth of the matter, though, Jeff, is, like, Wirfs has been the best. And look, he's maybe an easier situation because there's a good offensive line. You have Tom Brady there, et cetera, et cetera. But he has been the best offensive lineman by a mile in that class out of all those guys that were drafted.
He's one of those guys, the night he was drafted, I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's see what team these offensive linemen go on. Because I liked all 4 of them. And when he landed in Tampa Bay, I'm like, that's perfect. He doesn't even have to play left tackle. He can go slide the right tackle. He can go be dominant over there. Tom Brady's going to be his quarterback. Bruce Arians runs a tight ship, a good ship. It just seemed like a match made in heaven for him. And now the only question is, when you got to pay him and how much is he going to get paid?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought I was muted. I wasn't. It's been a long day. I was looking at the PFF numbers. I was just curious to see where he checks out. He's 6th in terms of PFF grade. We'll get to 2. Oh, Jordan Mailata was 3rd on PFF.
Jordan Mailata was higher than Tristan Wirfs last year. I don't even know.
Colton Miller was 5th. Whitworth was 4th. Whitworth's probably, we didn't even talk about snubs, but Whitworth, if he hadn't retired, is probably on this list too.
Whitworth has the most snaps played in NFL history.
I did not know that. That's a great stat.
That's one of those weird stats I found out over the year. I'm like, what the? How does anybody have more snaps played than Tom Brady? Andrew Whitworth does.
That is amazing. I saw Whitworth at St. Elmo's in the 2017 offseason. So, like, the offseason in between 2016 and 2017. It's when he was a free agent, and he was already at that point in time 35, maybe 36 years old. I can't remember, but old free agent, right? Bengals don't want to pay him. He'd been there forever because they drafted Jake Fisher and Cedric Ogbuie, and they were going to reboot their offensive line and let Andre Reed and Whitworth go. Like, that dude was so just huge, but also just, like, cut. Like, Whitworth was never like a big, he's just, I was like, oh my God, that man could squish my head with his fingers. Like, he would just be like, boop, and just pop my head. Anyway, I don't know why I'm ranting about Whitworth and what a monster he is, but you get the point. Whitworth probably on the list, high up there with PFF, also high up there. As I mentioned, Tristan Wirfs came in at 6, and really the 3 through 8, actually 3 through 10. Lane Johnson was 10. All those guys are pretty snug in there together. The top 2 guys, though, match up with your top 2 list, and they are substantially higher than everybody else. Tyron Smith at number 2 for the Dallas Cowboys, a mainstay on these offensive line lists for like the last decade, really.
Yeah, but my favorite is, how do you put him so high when he doesn't play? I'm like, he does play. And when he plays, he's really, really good. If Tyron Smith could play all 16, 17 games in a season, he probably rivals Trent Williams for number 1, and he's already doing that. Tyron Smith is, I hate to admit it, but he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yes, I think that's probably right. I mean, like it's the Cowboys' lack of postseason success is probably the only thing. Like, I hadn't even thought of it, but yeah, Tyron Smith, almost certainly a Hall of Famer. So he was also in that 2011 draft class. Because I want to say he was like 19 when he was drafted. No, he's 20 when the Cowboys took him 9th overall. Again, like the Titans took Jake Locker at 8, and then Tyron Smith at 9 to the Cowboys, Blaine Gabbert at 10, and J.J. Watt at 11. It's like, wow, no wonder that that the Titans sucked for a while, and the Jaguars sucked, and the Cowboys and Texans had great success for like 5 years immediately after that. Smith is the last time he played a full season was 2015. He hasn't played more than 13 games since then. Also is not, made the All-Pro team in 2016, only playing 13 games, but has not made an All-Pro since. And like, we're not knocking the guy, but he is getting older. I mean, his plays maybe dipped a little bit, but mostly because of injuries, I think, right? I mean, when you look at this, like when like you said, when he's out there, he's playing great. His 90.2 rating is the number 2 rating at PFF. Number 1 though, I mean, it's obscene. 96.6 PFF rating, and easily the best offensive lineman in football last year. The best offensive lineman in football for a while now. Another guy, I think he played at Oklahoma with Lane Johnson. I could be wrong. Trent Williams of the 49ers, who, drafted by Washington, played there forever, played with Kyle Shanahan. Shanahan leaves. Trent Williams leaves. He gets freed. He goes to San Francisco, where he gets to team up with Shanahan on an offense where Shanahan has full control of everything. And he has been just all they could ask for and more, well worth every penny they pay him, and the best offensive lineman in football.
Oh, yeah. So I'm trying to, you know what? Now that you brought this up, I'm trying to remember if they were teammates. I think they might have been. Or Lane Johnson was probably a quarterback then at that point. Who knows?
A quarterback?
He was a not at Oklahoma, but he was quarterback in junior college.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember.
He was a tight end. Lane Johnson was a tight end in 2010 when Trent Williams was, I'm assuming, the starting left tackle.
Yeah, because his rookie year was 2011, right?
No, Williams wasn't in there. Oh, maybe they didn't play.
Oh, no, 2010 was Trent Williams' rookie year. That's right. Because I remember, who was it?
No. He was on. Lane Johnson was on 2009. So they would have crossed paths at Oklahoma. I'm sure they're boys because they're on the same team. But let's see. Let me double check and make sure. Yep, Lane Johnson was a sophomore tight end in 2009, and Trent Williams was a senior offensive lineman. So they definitely they were teammates. So
yeah,
I don't think they were like arm in arm, Lane Johnson was probably a lightly used tight end, and Trent Williams was a starting all-American left tackle who was
be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it seems like ever since Trent Williams has been in football, he's been good. And even in the years in Washington, when he was just making Pro Bowls every year, I used to tell people this. People do know he might be better than Tyron Smith. It's just that he plays for Washington. I mean, you could always Jason Peters was as good as he was. You could argue some years he was the 3rd best left tackle in his own division because you had Tyron Smith and you had Trent Williams. And I don't think people realize how good Trent Williams actually was until he actually started playing for a team that could compete for Super Bowls, unlike Washington.
Yeah, I mean, Washington absolutely, unquestionably, being on Washington held him back. So Mike Shanahan was coaching when they drafted him 4th overall, and Kyle was the offensive coordinator. I mean, I would assume that had plenty to that relationship clearly is helped to get him to San Francisco, where he's thrived in this offense. You just see these offensive linemen, whether it's Alex Mack or Trent Williams, the two biggest examples I think, where it's just like they are so perfect and they're good for any scheme, but they're so perfect with the Kyle Shanahan scheme. Like that's why you see Trent Williams just have an absolute monster year this past season, first team All Pro. Very, very easily can say he's the best offensive lineman in football, and you did just that by naming him number one. The one guy, Jeff, that I would say surprised it went on this, and if I was good at my job, I would have asked you about it before we did the top 10 list. But no Quentin Nelson.
Well, he's on the interior lineman.
Oh, this is just outside. Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, these are tackles. So, I mean, unless it's supposed to room the tackle or something, I don't know about because they don't have a left tackle right now.
No. I didn't. I thought we were just doing offensive lineman. I was like, man, Jeff really hates guards, huh? This is no. Okay, good. That's how you should have done it. You need to do a separate list for the interior offensive lineman because otherwise you're trying to figure out how to slot these guys in. You can see how much I've been paying attention throughout this, like through my entire existence, particularly this week. Okay, good.
Yeah, fun story about guards. So I did not play when I played high school. I strictly played defense. They listed me as a guard on the offense because I was quick, and I'm like, I played in a JV game once and I hated it. I couldn't say. I'm like, no, I like to hit, not get hit. This is stupid. And so I'm like, don't put me on offense anymore, ever. So
I was trying to look because I swear I think Pete might have surely he ranked Quentin. He had Quentin Nelson at 37. So he was a little bit lower than maybe I think people would have thought. I'm clear. I've been saying offensive linemen and not offensive tackles the entire time, and I was like, man, these are just all offensive tackles. Like, I guess I respect it. Like, he's just crapping all over these guards. No, obviously, you're smarter than I am. You have an interior offensive lineman list that we'll probably talk about at some point in the very near future. You can tell where my head's at. At any rate, it was a great list. I like the placement of these guys, especially with the injuries, with the Bakhtiari move, and you snuck two Eagles on there, which maybe last year this time, I'd be annoyed, this homer is putting these Eagles on there. But as an Eagles fan, as a lifelong Philadelphia Eagles super fan, I too am thrilled about the idea of multiple Eagles offensive linemen on this list because it means Jalen Hurts can thrive now that they have also added A.J. Brown to that offense. Excited to see what they do in the coming season. Jeff, a pleasure, buddy. Thank you for taking the time for cranking out a great list, and we'll talk soon, man.
Yeah, sounds great. Wait till the edge defenders and the whole, which that was a big argument.
That's the whole thing. Yeah, it's like how do you do the OLB versus the outside linebackers versus I may just go back.
We're just going to be ranking defensive players and not even giving them positions anymore.
Right, exactly. How do you? Yeah, exactly. Who qualifies for what? How do you move them around? Fortunately, I'm not going to worry about it. I'll let the editor sort that out. Jeff, as always, buddy. Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
That sounds great.